destroying our national sovereignty. I mean, Obama just did the same thing that Bush did, trying to enter into an agreement with Canada and Mexico for this, North American border. He started moving towards that. So I focus on the systemic problems. It wouldn't make a difference if you got rid of President Obama. If you were to impeach him and he was, fired, you'd still have the same problem. So, and also, I want to just one other question someone had. What about what do we do if we're, if the Earth-speaking president or some rogue element tries to use force against American people? A key point is that the military and police are essential for tyranny. And you can look at the fall of the Iron Curtain in Romania and East Germany. When the military stood down, the dictators were completely powerless. And in fact, tonight or tomorrow morning, we're going to post an interview with a former East German lieutenant colonel who's an oath keeper in Texas, who was there when the wall fell in East Germany. And, he talks about how the military was ordered to go and suppress the protesters, and they refused, and that was the end of the dictatorship. And so it's a key point we'll need to keep in mind. The more military police you can reach with a message of simply standing down, the folks, you can handle it, people can handle anything once the military and police get out of the way if there was an attempt to declare martial law.
Thank you, Stuart. Next question for Stuart Rhodes. Are there really FEMA camps?
I haven't been following that, and here's one reason why I don't, is because we saw during World War II, when they interned the Japanese Americans, all they had to do was throw up concertina wire around some old barracks. So I don't get too wrapped around the axle about whether they have actual physical camps right now. What I focus on is the legal infrastructure and the military infrastructure of NORTHCOM, for one, the Council of Governors for another, FEMA's another. All of these infrastructures are being put in place. And, as I said, whether they have concertina wire switch around barracks now or whether they do it after there's an emergency, doesn't really matter much to me. I focus on the legal and structural problems we have right now.
Thank you. I think this question might be directed to Stuart as well. Do you think there's a chance of martial law in 2012?
I think there's a chance because the term martial law is now being bandied about as somehow being constitutional. I think there's a risk. If we have an economic collapse, when we do, I think it's very, very possible. And so that's one thing we must get into our heads, is that martial law is absolutely illegitimate. You will not find it anywhere in our constitutional text. It's completely illegitimate. When the government declares martial law, what they're really doing is treating you as though you were occupied Iraq or Afghanistan or Germany or Japan. That's what martial law is. What MacArthur did to Japan was martial law, where the words of the commander, the will of the commander, is the law. There's no such thing under our constitutional order. If the president were to declare martial law, I would consider that a declaration of war on the American people. So, totally legitimate. But the way you prepare for that, it's possible. So the way you prepare for it is make sure that your state and your community is strong enough that you don't need outside help. So the military and police can turn to the president and say, hey, they don't need our help, so why are you telling us to go in there? That's what you want to see happen. And then, when the military and police don't see the legitimacy of the orders, they're more likely to get what happened in East Germany, a total stand down of the military and police. They just refuse to impose martial law.
Thank you. There was a question about does the IRA confiscation rule pertain to include Roth IRAs, and the answer is yes, it's all qualified accounts. There's another question to maybe Dr. Elliott. What happens to credit card companies and the debt we have when the economic collapse comes and the currency gets revalued or goes away?
When the currency gets revalued, anybody who is the issuer of debt really gets stuck behind the eight ball. And that's why there's always the potential in a hyperinflation for a bank to re-index mortgages, for example. Let's say that inflation is 100% and you're paying them back with less and less and less valued currency. What they can do is say, okay, still the same rate, still the same term, but instead of owing us $100,000, you now owe us $200,000. They're going to index for that inflation. If they don't do that, they could literally go out of business. And I have a feeling banks aren't going to allow themselves to go out of business.
Thank you, Kirk. Perhaps Dr. Davis, there's a question about the riots and things that are happening today in Wisconsin. Is this a precursor for other type of scenarios in this country?
Well, I think it may be. I think that what you're seeing there is the fiscal realities that the states are facing in this devaluation of the dollar and increasing pressure on states to have some sort of a budgetary system that works. I think that what's happened there and in other states that are pending bankruptcy, you're going to see them starting to use a default mechanism. I don't think that they're going to simply just default overnight. I think it's going to be a process. And I think that Stuart may be more qualified to answer that question, but it seems to me that they're going to begin in certain areas defaulting on specific areas of the debt that they have, and then adding to that until pretty soon I think you're going to see a significant amount of default. I don't think it'll happen overnight. Remember, there's many bonds that have been issued and a significant amount of debt out there. I think it'll be sort of a creeping default. Kirk, what do you think? Would you agree with me?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think it all boils down to a fiscal crisis. What's happening in Egypt, I think, is due to a fiscal crisis. People are poor, and whenever you see that, whenever you see things hitting people's pocketbooks, whenever people start running out of food, whenever entitlements are taken away, you're going to see massive riots. Well, Dr. Davis, I think you hit the nail on the head. And as we start having to cut expenditures here and start cutting things, people more and more are going to get uptight. And I think there's going to be massive areas of civil unrest. Probably the next area where you're going to see this maybe in New Jersey, because Chris Christie is going to start really messing with the teachers union there. And the teachers union in New Jersey's got to be mafia controlled. I can't see how it's not.
Thank you. This is a question, perhaps to Dr. Elliott, the fair tax or the flat tax? Which is best?
Well, yeah, we have to have taxes, yes, to pay for various things. What I actually like is just the national sales tax. That way you are, if you don't spend any money, you're not penalized. If you want to spend money, well, then you're going to pay your fair share of the tax. And so that's what I like as a national sales tax. However, you have to get rid of everything before that, because if you just start adding these national sales taxes when income taxes and so forth aren't gone away with, they're just going to keep adding to each other. So I think that would be my ultimate goal, would just be a national sales tax.
Thank you. Next, just a quick question of where can people find Kirk Elliott's articles, and that would be at kirkelliottphd.com, and also JM like Michael C Productions.org. Are metals safe in the safe box, Kirk?
For now, yes. I don't see any confiscation happening tomorrow. But that's something where you have to keep your antennas up, you have to keep your eyes and ears open, because things can change pretty rapidly. But for right now, I'd say you're still okay.
Thank you. This question is for Stuart Rhodes. Somebody wants to know if Sheriff Mack and yourself would go on a tour to alert the police departments of issues.
Sheriff Mack has already been doing much of that. He's been going around teaching classes to different sheriffs and the police law enforcement in different states. But certainly, I'd be happy to do that. I mean, he and I are both now part of the Nullify Now tour being put on by the 10th Amendment Center. And so, as part of that, we speak together. But we would certainly welcome him, going around and talking directly to police if it can be arranged. Let's do it. Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay. One moment. In the event of chaos, who controls would be used for gold as currency if it was Susan? Okay. In the event of the collapse,